Hello everyone, I'm here today to do a video about all of my 5-star reads since I started recording my star rating, and this might be an interesting video because I normally don't share my star ratings here, but I think that I do that because it's not very informative if you don't know the whole rating system that I use, and it might sound like kind of harsh compared to how other people do it. So I don't want to like mark down a book just because my star rating is different. So that's kind of like why I don't share it, but it is useful for me to kind of keep track of which things I enjoyed more than others. So yeah, for me a 5-star read means like a favorite of all times. I want to immediately reread it once I finished it, so it's like a really good book for me. And so I don't have that many. I have been recording this kind of rating for maybe 8-10 years now, and I have here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 books. So I have given about 10 5-stars in the last 8-10 years. Looking back on it, some of these might not be 5-star reads, and some of the ones that I have not given 5 stars to might be 5 stars, based on the impact that I have had on my life long term. But yeah, I think it's fairly representative of my favorite books, if you can say it like that. So to no one's surprise, the first book in this stack is The Wizard of the Crow by Ngozi. I have a full review of this. It's one of my favorite books. I hosted a read-along once for this, and this is basically about these two people in an imaginary African country that looks a lot like Kenya, and they have like sort of a dictator situation, and this boy in the book gets involved into, like, but kind of by chance becomes the wizard of the dictator that has some magical realism kind of disease, so they expect him to cure him from that, but he keeps saying, I'm not a wizard, I just tell people what they want to hear, or what they need to hear. And so for example, this disease makes the dictator inflate and inflate because he just wants more and more and more, and this man tells him like, maybe you should stop hoarding stuff. But yeah, that's kind of like the idea of the book, and what I like about this is basically a political satire, and I like the humor. I like the political aspects that I recognize from Kenya, and so yeah, this is one of my favorite books. It's a bit big, it's 760 pages, but it's, for me, it is worth the effort. The next one I have in my list is Our Sister Killjoy by Ama Ata Aidoo. And this again is African literature. It's from Ghana, this woman, and it's kind of almost poetical, and it's about a woman that leaves Africa to go study. It's like a stream of consciousness kind of book, and it kind of goes into the feelings of nostalgia and all of the things that she doesn't know about this new country, and how she's trying to adapt to this new country, and also like feeling a failure because of her studies don't go as well as she was expecting because all of these changes are happening in their life. Yeah, that's kind of like the idea of the book, and I really enjoyed it. This one is a short one, but yeah, it's very powerful, I think, and if you have moved away from your home country, I think this is very relatable as well. Continuing with the African literature, and the next one I have is Americanah by Chimamanda and Ngozi Adichie. Now, I want to preface this by, I know that Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie has said some transphobic things, and I completely do not support that part of her ideology, but that does not make appearance in her books. Her books are very much about race and colonialism, and she has quite interesting ideas on that front, and I read this book before any of that happened, and I gave this book 5 stars before any of that transphobia happened. So just to preface that. But yeah, this is about two teenagers in Lagos that are a couple and fall in love. It follows mainly the woman that then moves to the US to study, and the struggles that she has there, and like the difficulty of her as well being African instead of African American, and how she cannot really fit into the African American experience, but also obviously she's black, so she has some of that share knowledge on that as well. And yeah, how difficult it is to arrive to that balance. It also deals with like the 9/11 and how that changed the dynamics, and like she also talks about like the fact that she felt, well, like the main character, but it's kind of like Chimamanda and Ngozi Adichie also moved from Nigeria to the US at some point, so I guess some of this is based on her experiences as well. But yeah, she how she never thought about being black until she moved to the US, because obviously in Nigeria most people are black. And the main character does have a blog about all these racist things, and she posts them in the blog and talks about them. It's also kind of sarcastic in points, and I enjoy that. And I enjoyed the fact that it doesn't look down into like African countries. At the end, spoiler alert, the main character goes back to Nigeria, and everyone is very confused because she had a permanent residence permit in the US, and she had a life there, and she left that all to go back to Nigeria because she thought that she would have a better life and a better opportunities in Nigeria than she did in the US. So that kind of narrative I really enjoyed. I read this a long time ago though, so maybe like I have grown as a person, and maybe this would not have had the same impact if I would have read it now. But when I read it, I really enjoyed it, and I think it had a very big impact for me. The next book in the list is the book of Strange New Things by Michel Faber. This is a sci-fi book about a pastor that goes to this new planet, and at first he's just told that he's supposed to convert the people that they found there, and he was a little bit afraid, but when he arrived there, apparently like all these people were really keen on being converted, and they were really excited about what he had to say, which he was not expecting. But then as he starts finding out why they were so keen, and also why this company decided to bring him as a pastor to this country to preach there, things started to get muddier and muddier. It's kind of a slower sci-fi, but I still really enjoyed it. I think it has a lot of interesting things to say in an interesting way, and I like a slow pace sci-fi every once in a while, and this is also very well written. So yeah, there is a lot of little things going on in the background, and it's like the plot and the themes are quite complex, and they are explored in a very nuanced way, so I really enjoyed that. Then the next one I read in audiobook, and that is The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde, and I recommend reading it in audio because it's actually a play, so if it is a full cast it makes sense to read it in audio. And I really enjoyed this. I think it's in this list because it's one of the few classics I really enjoy. I think that and Frankenstein are probably the only two classics that I can think of on top of my head that I really enjoy. But The Importance of Being Earnest is very gritty and sarcastic about these two men that are both called Earnest, and kind of like their love affairs and stuff, and it talks about the position of women in that society in a very sarcastic way that I really enjoyed. So yeah, that one is also in the list. Then the next one I have is Flight to Canada by Ishmael Reed. This is set in kind of like an alternative reality of like the Civil War in the US, kind of. It's kind of like that time period, but with the technology that we had when this was written in the 70s, I think. So not the technology that we have now, like there's no smartphones, but there were TVs and there like all kinds of things like that. There's like phones and flights, and they also have things like healthcare, which doesn't come out immediately to mind as an invention of the 20th century, but it is, I guess. So yeah, this kind of reinvents that reality with all of these things. So for example, there, like slavery is obviously a lot more complicated when slaves can call someone and can take a flight. So that's why this is called Flight to Canada, because it's about this slave that is given a lot of power and a lot of trust in the plantation, and he ends up flying to Canada. But yeah, I think like the whole idea of this book is fun and it's quite interesting, and it's like a little bit nonsensical, but I really enjoyed it. The next book in my list, I also have a full review of. It's one of the first videos that I have in my channel, but I will still link it down below. It's the Overstory by Richard Powers. I love this book. I didn't think that you could write a book about trees, a novel about trees, until I read this. But yeah, this follows many characters, like 12 I think characters, and they, like at the beginning we get almost like short stories of each of them, and then their lives become more and more intertwined until like this big reveal, and all of them have to do with trees basically. One of my favorites was this scientist that she believes that trees communicate and have more inner life than what we first thought, and when she publishes her findings about that, she kind of gets cast away from the research societies, and she kind of goes to live in the middle of the forest. There are some activists, like climate activists. There is a man that has a disability, and kind of to run away from that disability, he creates as a video game based on trees as well. So there's a lot of characters, and there's a lot of like perspectives about this topic. But I just really enjoyed how feisty and still tender this is, and how it gives trees the forefront on this story, even though it's still about humans. I really enjoyed this. I think it's great storytelling, and it's great message as well. Then the next one I have is Who They Was by Gabriel Krause. This I also read in audio, and I also recommend the audio because the accents make a lot of this book what it is. So this is about this boy that has Polish origins, but he lives in an area of London that is like mostly black, low class, and he gets involved into like fights and gangs and drugs and robberies and stuff like that. So it's very brutal. Like the first line, it was quite powerful, but I really enjoyed this. I think the way that it was written was really impactful to me, and the way that it was told in the audiobook as well, because obviously this it's read by the author, because the author can speak this like Creole kind of English, but also Polish, and also like this like suburb English from London, which is not very easy to find anyone else that does that. But yeah, it shows how someone can get involved into all of these bad things when you are surrounded by so much violence and poverty when you are young. And luckily, obviously, this is auto-fiction, so this is like real things that happen to him, and we see that obviously he gets out of that life in a sense, but he recognizes that it's not easy, and his situation could have gone really bad at any moment. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think it's very well written. It's like the lyricism and the like way that the story is told is the main thing that I think this book does really well. And the next one I have is Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer, and this is a non-fiction about basically nature. So Robin Wall Kimmerer is a biologist, and she approaches this halfway into like biology and halfway from her Native American background, and like blends the two and explain why having contact with nature and being like aware of nature is very important. And this had a very strong and impactful effect on me. I still think about this. I have read it years ago. I want to reread it very soon, because I also remember there were some things that she did with her children to pass on that love for nature and that respect for nature as well. Like, and I want to introduce some of those practices as well in my life and in Alex's life, and so I really want to reread this maybe this year, to like refresh how impactful this was and how much there is still to do. So yes, I love this one. And then the last one I also don't have, because I also read in audiobook, and that is Stillborn by Guadalupe Netel. I read this in Spanish, so La hija única, and this is about two women mainly, that in their youth they didn't want children, and one of them is very adamant that she doesn't want them and still doesn't want them, and the other one finds someone that she loves, and they decide that they want to have children at the end. But this other woman has a very strong has a very hard time getting pregnant, and when she's pregnant there are more complications that come, and so it's not an easy ride for her. And it's that discussion about motherhood without being simple. Like, there are so many nuances, and also like even it's narrated from the point of view of the woman that never wants children, but she still can love children that are around. She just doesn't want to have one, and she doesn't feel the need to produce a human from her own body. And I think that like all of these different perspectives on motherhood were very interesting and very nuanced and very powerful. And I think maybe this would not have had the same impact on me if I was not in like new mother kind of situation when I read it, but I was, and it did have a lot of impact, because yeah, motherhood is also something that I kind of, it's a concept that I find difficult, even though I'm a mother. But yeah, so that book explores all of that in so much detail and so much depth that I think it's very successful, and it's very powerful as well. So yeah, those are all the books that I have given 5 stars to. In hindsight, probably not all of them are 5 stars, and I will put some other instead, but still there are books that I really loved. And let me know if you have read any of these, if you loved any of these. Maybe I would love to know what your 5-star reads look like. And until next video, bye!